There was a comment on this channel that I saw recently, and it was quite painful for me to read. A student whose relative has been persuading her that CA course is worthless, that you will get only 20,000 per month even if you become fully qualified. The student who wrote this to me also was quite disturbed by this relative and said that she used to have big regards for her, but she's been giving her all the reasons why the student should not be doing CA and somehow wants her to change lines. I felt quite bad for this student because I could totally relate to it. Personally, this has happened to me multiple times, and I'm sure that it could be happening in your life as well. So, I decided let's make a video on this topic and share my experience and also give you ideas on how you can handle toxic relatives. So, let's get into segment number 1. Almost every relative offers a piece of advice. Some of them might be in your good interest, but most of the others are toxic. The problem is, if you are young and naive, you might not clearly identify which ones are said in your best interest and which ones are clearly scheming against you. The question is, how do you take a calculated guess on which advice you should take seriously and which ones you should reject? I have 3 guiding questions for this. Whenever you are deciding whether you should take somebody's advice seriously, ask yourself, do I respect that person? Does their lifestyle inspire me in a good way? Are they nudging me towards CA or persuading me to quit CA? These should be your guiding questions. Now, I will give you examples of what are all the advice I got and how I used the guiding questions to decide whether to take them seriously or not. I'll start with showing how bad advice usually looks like. The most popular form of bad advice is the one you receive from distant relatives. You get to meet them in some family function or weddings, etc. You would run into them and eventually you have to have a small talk with them for 3 to 5 minutes. And in that short time, they always manage to come up with interesting stories. It always goes like this. I heard that you are struggling with CA. See, I know a person in my office. He started doing CA from his early 20s. He's in his mid 30s now and he's still trying to become a CA. Neither he could concentrate on his job properly nor on the course. He wasted his whole life on it. Or the story can be, see, I know a person in my gym. He cleared CA after so many attempts. Still, it's of no use. He's working in a firm for a salary of 30,000 per month and they are making him come to office 7 days a week. He was fuming about the other day that becoming a CA was the biggest mistake he made. And once they finish their stories, they would immediately fit the story with you. They'll say, don't become like the guy I told you about. This course is not as great as you think. Why don't you think of any other course that's within your capability? You don't have to take this much stress. You don't have to work this hard. The most hurting part is when they say, why don't you do anything that is within your capability? I mean, I would be like, who are you to decide what's my capability? We just met like 5 minutes ago. But personally, these are the types of people I easily ignored because when I asked the guiding questions, they got disqualified fair and square because these are the people I disrespect the most. They haven't done anything inspiring. Their life is filled with mediocrity, and if they see somebody trying to punch above their weight, their first job is to come and drag that guy down. And they always nudged me out of CA. So that was the example of bad advice. Now I'll give you some examples of how good advice would look like. Throughout my inter and final, I was applying for both the groups because I so badly wanted to get a rank and clear CA. It's not bad to aim for a rank, but you have to invest the equivalent amount of effort for that, right? But I didn't do that. I was getting 38 to 45 on average in all the papers and also failing to get the aggregate. My maternal uncle got so pissed off with this and one day he asked, why are you aiming for a rank? Don't you have a common sense that when you know you can't put that much amount of effort, the wisest thing is to give group by group and get out of the course? Had you gone group by group, you would have cleared this course like 3 years ago. I kind of diluted the whole scene here, but back in the day, it was an intense conversation and my uncle was a pretty sharp-tongued man and I didn't feel good at all after talking to him. So this was one incident, and then there was another incident, and this was with my cousin with whom I stayed in a PG in Chennai. I failed my CA inter for the 6th time and went to my hometown to see my parents. My cousin called me while I was in my hometown and told me that if you are planning to come back to Chennai to our place, you come back without your cell phone. If you come with your cell phone to Chennai, I will not speak to you hereafter, and we are done with that. These are the two incidents. The point is, they both were not pleasant advice. In both the incidents, they showed me tough love. But again, the question is not about whether the advice was sweet or was it harsh. The question is whether the advice passes your guiding questions. And in those two cases, the answer was yes to all the questions. Both my uncle as well as my cousin, I respected both of them so much, and their job and lifestyle indeed inspired me a lot at one point of time in my life. And yes, both of them were persuading me into becoming a CA and not out of CA. Now that we saw the examples of both bad and good advice and how to interpret them, but what if you receive advice much worse than bad advice? What if you have a toxic relative whom you cannot escape? Either they stay so close to your home or you run into them once every 2 weeks, and every time they see you, they get inside your skin so badly. Some people just don't want to see you do well in life. I had a relative who said to my face, "Why the hell you want to become a chartered accountant? You were from a lower middle class. Why don't you stay where you belong?" It was like "Aukat mein raho" type of a comment. So how do you handle that? I'll give you two counter mechanisms which I used in my career. It worked quite well for me. Let's see if they resonate with you. The first counter mechanism. I read a story in my childhood that there was a guy in a village who looked and talked funny. People always made fun of him and alienated him. One day a monk visited that village, and this guy went and told the monk about his problem, that everyone is making fun of him and it disturbed him a lot. He asked the monk how to overcome this situation. The monk asked the guy to carry an open cup full of oil and said, "Walk across the entire village with this cup in your hand. The only condition is that you should not spill a drop of oil." This guy agreed to it and did the task successfully and returned to the monk. The monk asked, "How was the walk? Did you see anybody mocking you, throwing abuses at you while you were performing this task?" The guy said, "I don't know. That didn't even come to my mind. Were the people still making fun of me?" The monk said, "Yes, the people were still making fun of you, but you didn't seem to notice them because you were so fully focused on the cup and you took enough care to not spill a drop of oil." The boy got the message. So the first counter mechanism is to get hyper focused on your goal. What is your objective? At this point in life, your goal is to become a CA. So only that thought should occupy the vast majority of your mental space. Your goals are not something you visit once every 3 months. You need to read your goals first thing every morning. If you do this regularly, your mind automatically filters out the noise and lets you focus only on what's the need of the hour. That leads us to the second counter mechanism. Did you ever get to see Michael Jordan's Hall of Fame speech? In case you haven't, I would recommend you to watch it after this video. To give you a context, the great MJ's Hall of Fame speech was 23 minutes long, but almost the entire speech was directed on him answering his critics. It was all about Jordan saying, "You were wrong about me," to all the people who doubted him. At that time, it was a surprising thing for a lot of people who saw that. People used to think that the critics and haters didn't matter to Michael Jordan much. He always carried the impression that he was above all of them. But the Hall of Fame speech conveyed that MJ was not above and beyond the people who doubted him. Rather, they were his fuel. The critics gave him that extra bit of work ethic. He indeed took them personally and he was obsessed with proving his doubters wrong. Now, I want you to understand the message clearly. I don't want you to make the whole purpose of your life to get back at all those people who doubted at you. I still want you to live for yourself. I still want you to get hyper focused on your goal. All I'm saying is, instead of fuming over what other people say about you, instead of their comments crippling you, I want you to repurpose the hate and anger as a fuel for your growth. You can also learn to repurpose your anger by observing the career of Virat Kohli. Every time people doubted his form and career, he addressed those weaknesses and came back twice as hard. Every time the Australians tried to sledge Virat Kohli, they got twice as much back from him. Kohli has this habit of answering his critics through his bat. This image is so close to me. Every time somebody questions my integrity or my work ethic or doubts my ability, of course I would feel hurt and get angry. But then I would simply look at this picture, repurpose all my anger as fuel, and get back to work. I don't like to waste my time answering my critics. I just want to improve my output at every possible occasion and let the results do the talking. Actions speak louder than words, results speak louder than actions. And that leads us to the final segment, what happens after you succeed. Now that you held your breath, pushed your feet on the accelerator, and made the distance, you have become a CA and you also got a good job. Let's say your life is kind of set now. Now there are two possibilities. One, the people who kept doubting you all these days will say that you have been persistent all of a sudden. You will be transformed from the guy who had been foolishly pursuing CA to the guy who never gave up. And some people will also say that I knew one day you will make it. I have always believed in you. So enjoy the sudden twist in the tale. But the second and the worst possibility is that some relatives who are hyper toxic might stop talking to you altogether. They would be so jealous that they can't digest the fact that you did it. You might hear them saying to other relatives, I heard he cleared CA. Has CA become that easy that even he managed to clear? These people are borderline narcissists. They will never have the heart to congratulate you. They will never say you have done a good job. They will try to always undermine your success at any rate possible. And when this happens, know that you are not the problem, they are. Had I blindly listened to my relatives, I wouldn't have been here where I am in my life right now. I would have quit pursuing CA, I would have stayed in a mundane job, I wouldn't have written a book, I wouldn't have started a YouTube channel. This video wouldn't be here for you had I listened to all my relatives and let them get into my skin. So hang in there and keep up the fight. Everything will make sense 5 years from now.